Welcome back to Half Banked. I'm Betha Moorcraft.
And I'm Kadeem Layler.
Thanks for joining us for the third episode in our three-part real estate series, The Next Generation of Home Buying.
In part 3, we're exploring alternatives to traditional homes. According to rentals.ca, the average one-bedroom apartment rental in Canada costs just over $1,700 a month. This can impact a renter's ability to save for a home. This has also led to an increase in the amount of millennials living with a family or roommates, according to research by University of Western professor Kate Choi and University of Toronto professor Sagi Ramaj.
The average cost of a home in Canada is around $716,000 as of April 2023. And of course, the price is even higher in hotspots like Vancouver and Toronto. A March 2023 study by Finder, Generation Rent, also showed that 29% of Canadians have given up on the idea of home ownership altogether and expect to rent forever.
So far, we've given you tips for the home buying journey, but we've been working on the assumption that you want to buy a traditional home.
Maybe you want to travel a lot and don't want to splurge on renting or buying a home. You might elect to try van living. You won't have much space or a proper place to call home, or a bathroom, but it can offer freedom and savings.
Or maybe a traditional house seems too out of reach financially. A traditional home is about 1,500 square feet in Ontario, and the space will cost you. Maybe a tiny home, which is about 100 to 400 square feet, is more for you. It can offer a cheaper option for a congested and competitive housing market.
Today we're discussing alternative home buying strategies. We'll chat with comedian Matt Watson about living the van life and all the benefits and challenges that come along with that.
We'll also discuss the pros and cons of tiny homes with Bianca Metz, lead tiny home consultant for the Giving Tree, based in Ontario, and Roger Allan Gallant, owner and operator of Eco and Viral Builders, a tiny home builder based in PEI. Our first guest is Matt Watson, a comedian and storyteller from Russell, Ontario, who's performed all over the world and can frequently be heard on Sirius XM radio. For the moment, he's planted in Russell, but spent 2 years in Australia and several other places. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Kadeem. You got a beautiful speaking voice, buddy. I'm happy you're doing something with audio because it's lovely. Like, it's very soothing.
Thank you.
Not putting me to sleep, but just very, also compelling. But you got a great speaking voice, buddy. It's very smooth.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, I'll try to stay humble for the rest of the interview as well. So we'll dive into, obviously, questions you probably get all the time, but what kind of compelled you to try this life out, the nomadic van living?
I don't think it's the way that most people end up diving into it because for me, I just wanted to do comedy. And here in Canada, the cities just seem to be so far apart that it just made financial sense to sleep in your transportation. So, like, weirdly enough, I remember taking like one of those quizzes in high school that like they give you a few questions and then they say like one of these careers you might like is being like a firefighter because you picked X, Y, and Z. I remember saying on that I do not like traveling. Yeah, it's so crazy. And to be honest, again, it was all the comedy that fueled it. I just love doing stand-up. And within that sort of helped me fall in love with traveling itself. I hadn't even been to the west coast of Canada prior to doing this. And so it's a lot of the reasons that I've seen a lot of my country and a few different parts of the world too. So yeah, I definitely am a big fan of it now, but out of the gate, it was just a means to an end, I guess, for me.
Do you miss any of the home comforts though?
Of course, all those creature comforts. You just sort of get into a routine, I guess, and that just becomes your normal. What are some things that I'd miss though? It just becomes a little bit more, it becomes a little bit more tricky living without a constant, source of power. With both my vehicle here in Canada and over there in Australia, both of the batteries, they call them leisure batteries, which would be, bonus batteries to charge maybe your fridge or your computer or whatever. I have a couple of those in, one in Australia, two here. And then when you're driving around, it will charge that battery. But people online that you see doing this thing, like they're always on like a beach. They've got it like 6 packs. Their dogs have 6 packs for some reason. Like it's not a real projection of what this is what this really is. But for me, a guy that's doing comedy, usually I'm in a city and not necessarily moving around all that much. So I need to be careful with what I'm spending all this power on because, as soon as your fridge dies, you're losing all your food in there. I've got a buddy in Australia that, believe it or not, really into hockey. And as I would stream the games, probably just on my phone, once I got to know him, he was inviting me over to his place to watch it on like his big 70-inch screen TV. That's something I'm sure that as you would with anything you get, eventually you take it for granted. But every time I went over to watch one of those games, in compared to watching on such a tiny screen, I was just mesmerized by this IMAX setup that he's got going. So
You can actually see the puck.
yeah, I actually knew who won the game, which was nice.
One thing you mentioned as well was social media kind of like having a more romanticized idea of what van living looks like. I guess I was wondering what are kind of the biggest, again, differences you find in reality kind of versus how it's usually portrayed, or how what you've come across at least.
Some of the biggest differences. I always see so many happy couples doing van life. I have a lovely girlfriend over in Australia, and she had never tried camping before. In her defense, I do this lifestyle pretty rough. My setups are usually pretty primitive, but we we did it for a few nights. She hates it. Like, she cannot stand it whatsoever. So part of me, like, seeing these happy couples, oh man, like there's another incident with an ex in Scotland where we had planned on taking this vehicle that I was working on in our parking lot around the North Coast 500, they call it. It's just around the outer rim, the north coast of Scotland. I was done building the vehicle, but unfortunately, when I was done building the vehicle, our relationship ended. But we decided to take the trip anyway because she was adamant, and I'm always looking for new material. So we piled into this vehicle, and like, couples therapy might be a thing. Couples van therapy, I'm not an advocate for. Like, it is not. That's if you're having troubles with the person you're with and you have space between you, don't jam it all into such a tiny space.
Absolutely.
So, Matt, you were talking about kind of, making new material, etc. The poster for your show, your one-man show, Van Lord,
Yeah.
shows you outside your van in your boxes holding up some toilet paper in some fantastic socks, by the way. So that begs the question, which I'm sure you must get all the time: what do you do when you don't have a bathroom, or things like that? Kind of, how do you manage all of that?
First of all, Bethan, thank you so much for complimenting that photo. It's like my pride and joy. I was picturing like the front cover of Breaking Bad with Walter White in his underwear. That's what I was going for. It was COVID time, so I had the toilet paper in my hand, and the wind just caught it at the right time. Like that, I've been getting a little better with Photoshop, but that one is straight up as it is. So I appreciate you.
Six pack is underneath the t-shirt.
Of course.
Yes, right. Yes, of course. Bathrooms. So it's not glamorous. This is not glamorous. This is the stuff that would have to be censored on social media. So if I need to pee, I usually have a jar of some sort. I know that's not pretty, and it's not what you want to hear, but maybe keep that in your back pocket in case I ever invite you over. I'll be handing you a jar if you're asking to use the toilet. The van that I have here, I do have what they call it's even more, whatever. It's called a boombox. It's just a bucket with a toilet seat on it that you would insert bags in. Truth be told, I've never actually had to use it. That was for an emergency situation whilst traveling around. I'm pretty good at finding public toilets. That and if you're doing comedy, usually that's in a venue of some sort. I've learned to make sure to use the washroom before I leave. Coffee shops are also great. I've had a gym pass in a few different countries that you can just sort of go in and use it there, and then hey, you end up even maybe working out as well to get your money's worth on that pass. Some people have different setups. Some people have like compost toilets or cassette toilets, I guess is what the other ones are called. Again, my setups are pretty primitive, so I've never been that much of a diva that I need a bathroom in my humble abode.
So I'm wondering, since you use a more primitive setup, so there's a stat by Barefoot Theory that says van life can cost anywhere from $800 a month to $2,000 a month, and that includes like costs outside of the van itself, gas, insurance, food, and so forth. Are you able to kind of walk us through some of your regular monthly expenses?
Yeah, sure. So, dude, I really don't do this like the people that you see online. You would think if someone had a house with wheels, they'd be obsessed with taking it everywhere. And don't get me wrong, I do take road trips with it, but I've sort of fallen in love with my routine in Melbourne. And within that routine, there is a little spot in this neighborhood that is free parking 24/7. It's got public bathroom nearby, so I don't move all that much. And in the park, there's a place to cook too. So I don't even need to use my cooking setup within my own vehicle. So I do it for very cheap. I guess my biggest expense is probably I always spend a little bit extra on the phone bill. Well, I mean, some people have modem setups, but I don't have Wi-Fi in my vehicle, so everything's being run out of that. If I want to use my laptop or my phone, because I do weekly videos on my YouTube channel, Matt Watson Comedy. So I got a way to be able to charge my stuff and upload stuff like that. So maybe that's like actually 50 or $60 a month, maybe something like that. The phone plans are a lot cheaper anywhere but Canada. They seem to be so much cheaper everywhere else. I found out recently that in the state of Victoria, where Melbourne is, you don't actually, assuming my friend wasn't messing with me, you don't, I guess, need insurance on your vehicle. I do have the bare minimum, which covers if I were to hit somebody. It's not much. It's like no more than let's say $200 a year or something like that. There's the registration for the vehicle. That's probably a few $100 a year. It really does depend how you do it. Gas wise, I'm not spending all that much because I'm not moving all that much.
I'm wondering as well, since you touched on parking, you mentioned Wi-Fi. So I'm wondering, are those kind of like extra expenses that usually come up? Because I know parking can possibly be tough to find, and that's kind of like one of those costs that might creep up on you at times. Because I know there's also Reddit forums specifically for van living, places to find parking spots and so forth that people recommend via those forums. Because I'm wondering about you, how you've managed to save money on that piece. You said where your park is free now. Like, how do you go about finding those spots where you also won't get hassled?
Kadeem, that is my wheelhouse, buddy. That is I pride myself on not paying for parking. Oh man, it's got to be so annoying if you're ever driving with me, and especially if we're late for something. Like I don't settle. I do not settle when it comes to parking spots. If I'm going to a new city, I will try to see if I can find anything online. Like for instance, I wanted to do a video about parking in Sydney, and I'd only been there one other time. So before, going and spending a week or two there, I was able to find, what was it called? It was called Sydney Spot Finder. And literally you could tick boxes on free, like overnight, or like free overall.
Mm.
Yeah. So I was like circling areas where there were spots. So I had an idea of where to go and checked out. And like, I tell people, like, you go with your gut when you're trying to find a parking spot. You want to feel safe. Obviously, I think like instinctually, a lot of us have that, like within our core of like, if you feel comfortable in a particular space, you should listen to that. And if you feel safe, then yeah, that's your spot.
Well, it sounds like you really like living in a van. Would you go back to living in a traditional four-wall home apartment? Like, what would push you to make that decision these days?
I'm sure age will get me there at some point. Okay. I'm not in the van 24/7. In Australia, my girlfriend's got this lovely place just about an hour and a half south of Melbourne down the coast, and it's in a little town called Mornington, and it's beautiful. So obviously when I'm there half the week, I'm not stubbornly staying in the driveway in the vehicle. I am relishing in the opportunity to be in that beautiful home with her. But at the same time, I don't know, man, there's something that like, I don't get it every morning, but occasionally, like, I'll wake up in the morning, I'm in a foreign country, and I'm free. I got no ties. And I get this feeling like I'm just getting away with something, and it gives me, I don't know, makes me excited. Yeah. So I'm sure someday I'll end up in a home, but for now, I'm going to keep rolling with this lifestyle.
So lots of ups and downs of van living financially and other ways too for our listeners to take in. So thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us, Matt.
No, thank you so much for having me. I hope you guys have a great day.
So, Kadeem, do you feel the van life calling?
As much as I like talking to Matt, I will have to say no. I think a piece of that lifestyle in terms of like reaping the benefits also requires just a psychological shift to kind of needing less things, wanting more freedom, wanting to move around more. Even if you're not moving every day, it still doesn't offer as much stability, I guess, as as a traditional condo or whatever it is. Something I'd like to try, but just for long term for me, for multiple years at a time, I don't know if it's something that I could commit to.
Yeah, definitely. I think it'd be fun to do it on a holiday, a vacation, go away for a few weeks, see the world.
Yeah.
Not that you're going to do that in a few weeks.
But then it's not really van living too.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that actually proves the point that we were talking about, that people like me look at it and go, wow, you can drive anywhere and see anything. But actually it's a style of living rather than just, a mode of transport.
Yeah. So a road tripper, we don't quite, fit into that category. I can definitely admire it too. I mean, especially it can be a great way just to save money and travel. But just personally for me, long term, not on the cards. And I think even what he did mention, Matt, that as he gets older, possibly he might want to have more stability, and by that time settle down. And I guess older for him could be 50s. Who knows?
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I like a lot of the reasons behind van living, but I think I prefer the idea of living in a tiny home, a static tiny home, or even one on wheels, with a few more of the home comforts that you can have. Our next two guests are two tiny home experts from two very different parts of Canada, and they have got lots of good advice to share.
Our next guest is Roger Allan Gallant, owner and operator of Eco Enviro Builders, a tiny home builder based in PEI. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So first off, if you'd like to just talk a little bit about yourself. I mean, I've read a little bit about how you got into tiny homes. If you just want to share that in your own words.
Well, about 8 years ago, I went on a trip with an ex-girlfriend to Australia, and we lived in the back of a van for a short time, and I decided this was the way I want to live my life. So coming back to Canada, we had to do something a little different. Obviously, we have winter. It's not summer 365 days of the year. So I decided I was going to build my first off-grid tiny home in her backyard. The rest is history. About a year later, I moved into it and wish I'd done it years ago.
I guess part of you, it seemed like for you, was a feeling of freedom, basically, with switching over to a tiny home, as opposed to, I guess, your traditional home before, right?
Absolutely. It's the main reason I'm doing this. I've always wanted to do it. This was just the right time to flip. I've always wanted to live simpler, mortgage-free, provide my own things. Never understood why we lived in such large homes. I much more enjoy the freedom of my lifestyle. Absolutely.
I see the tiny home market is estimated to grow by over $4 million, by 2027, according to a report by Technavio. So you've mentioned your reasons. You've thought about freedom and so forth. Why do you think basically some of your clients are coming to you? What makes it an option for them that they want to seek out?
I think two things. One is the freedom of living off-grid. I exclusively build off-grid homes. I don't tie to the grid. We go with composting, everything, solar systems, propane heat for water and cooking, and wood stoves. And I think the other reason is I'm affordable, to be honest with you. The whole reason I started doing this was because I was watching people build tiny homes for $100,000, and I thought that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I could make one for way less. My first home was $11,000 and it was beautiful. That includes all solar gear. So from that point forward, I've made it my mission for those that can't afford the $100,000 tiny home or a $200,000 regular home or whatever they are nowadays. I want to build something at a fair price that somebody can afford from somebody who actually lives the lifestyle, not somebody who's living in a large home building you expensive tiny homes.
All right. So you said 11,000. I'm wondering, so in terms of what you're selling for and then how much it costs to make, I just want to verify the numbers.
Absolutely.
So just the difference between those two.
Yeah. So that was obviously my first home, and that was 8 years ago. Prices have changed drastically with COVID.
100%.
Nowadays with COVID, a 40-foot shipping container is what I build in. That's what I'm sitting in right now. This present build is at a cost of about $40,000. That includes my labor and everything so far. And we have probably somewhere between 5 to 10 to go. That includes your solar panel, your wood stove, your cook stove, your fridges, batteries, everything you need, including me going to the place where she's dropping it, digging her a solar well, building her some decks, everything will be well under $50,000, I'm sure. Could I do it for less? Absolutely. If you can thrift one and find recycled materials, that type of thing, you can be far less. I can spend more, but really, why should we?
So, Roger, is it often a project where people like you, they want to go into this tiny home lifestyle, they come to you, they want to work on it together? Is it a passion project?
For me, it's a passion project. For them, I imagine it is too. I don't get a lot of people that want to do the whole thing with me. More so what I may get is I may stop at a certain point and they'll take over. Mm-hmm. With my assistance, maybe from a satellite, from over a phone or that type of thing. But I've also had clients where I've built it to a point where they have a nice shell with pine inside, and then they take it home, and then 2 years later I go and finish it for them because life gets in their way. Mm-hmm. So by all means, you're welcome to finish it off yourself or work side by side with me. I haven't experienced that as of yet. I find most people unfortunately have their lives and jobs to go. So they just let me go about my work. And at the end of the day, they're happy with what's happened.
And you've also mentioned, I think when you spoke before, you mentioned that your client base, you'd say, is roughly like maybe about half millennial, say 25 to 34. Is that right?
Yeah, I get all age groups asking me lately that I've built for. I can say everybody is over 30, up to close to seniors. But I absolutely get a lot of young. I get the most of the younger people are more willing to do it themselves. Does that make sense?
Okay, for sure.
Because they want to save the money. They don't have the income yet. They don't have the savings that maybe somebody who is 40 plus does. So what I find is those are the ones who come to me for free information, which I am more than happy to give you all the advice in the world, show you where I live, show you how to build. I can come to your project and give you a day's worth of work and put you back on the right track, that type of thing. But it's definitely the younger generation, 30 and under, who are more willing to do the sweat equity themselves.
All right, interesting.
I'm interested in the off-grid part of this, and how you power tiny homes. As Roger, we're talking today over a platform using the internet. You're in a tiny home out in PEI. So, all of that requires power, everything we do. So, how do you factor that into the building process? And what sort of unique ways are tiny home dwellers using to, get on grid, so to speak?
Got it. So this house is completely powered by 4 solar panels, which is about 1,000 watt system. That's not a lot. I'm sure there are people out there going, you can't power a house with 1,000 watts. If you get rid of the things in a regular house that consume the big electrical draws, you can absolutely power a house with 4 solar panels. In today's day, most of us are cell phones, laptops, internet, maybe a little bit of television. The television really isn't much of a draw. Your laptops, cell phones, and internet are nothing. My biggest draw is actually Starlink internet. Other than that, it's nothing in my home. And now that you're using propane for a cook stove and propane to heat your water, you've taken away those big heating elements out of a regular house. And that was about 90% of your power need. So other than lights, running a solar fridge, and charging the occasional laptop, there's no real electrical use being used. I probably only use, this was before Starlink, maybe 500 watts of power a day.
Mm-hmm.
But now with Starlink, I'm probably turning it on and off. I'm probably 1,000, still more than enough for my panels to run. There are certain days in the dark of winter where you have to live around the weather. You're looking at the weather going, it's going to be cloudy the next 7 days. I'd better watch what I'm using. You have to be somewhat responsible. Yes.
I guess I'm also wondering, in terms of looking at traditional homes, like, have you had much experience also building traditional homes? And I guess if you're looking at the comparison of building a tiny one, aside from obvious size considerations, are there anything else in particular that clients and yourself kind of keep in consideration when building a tiny home instead?
Now, I've never built a large home. The one main thing that I would say that I noticed the difference from having lived in a large home to a small one, it's a smaller space. You have to watch condensation possibly, or moisture in your home. But if you have a wood stove and you're willing to keep a window cracked, you're never going to have an issue. In the coldest of winter days, you don't want to put things in the lower corners of the house and allow air not to circulate. So I designed my home so everything is up off the ground and all the bottom can flow easy. You put a tiny little fan on top of the stove and your air circulates. You'll have absolutely zero mold, zero condensation, no moisture problems whatsoever.
And then as we sort of wrap up, I guess I'm also wondering, when it comes to building a tiny home, to trying to make basically space work in that smaller, are there any specific things you've used to basically kind of create more space, in a sense, for a small area?
Well, I mean, you got to use every corner by all means, but this is a 40-foot shipping container. It's actually quite large, I think, considering my own personal home is 3 sheets of plywood built 10 feet high. So it's about a third of the size of this. It's no different than probably a bachelor studio apartment in Toronto. I have a 4 by 8 bedroom or bathroom at the end. My kitchen is 8 feet long, double-sided, and I'm sitting in the living room. And then I have a bed, which you can see in the ceiling, that lowers down. So I actually have a dance floor over there if I really want to have a party.
Right.
I actually have quite a bit of room. It's probably more so about being minimalistic in yourself and not crowding your house with a ton of gadgets and trinkets. But at the end of the day, it's your house too. Live in it how you want.
No, I guess that will be a consideration if you want to live that lifestyle, understanding that there likely will be some, clutter possessions that might have to go in order to make it work compared to all the things that we accumulate sometimes.
Yeah, you're not getting the big sectional couch in here. You're living somewhat on a smaller, simpler scale, but absolutely, I have everything inside of my home, even my home, which is 89 square feet, that you do in your bigger home. It's just a smaller space. I've always told people I can be equally as bored inside of 89 square feet as I can 2,000.
That's very true.
Roger, you said that you've lived in 3 tiny homes. Is that correct?
Lived in three, no, 1, 2, 3. I'm living in my fifth one right now that I personally built.
Okay, well, that's cool. Number one. Number two, I'm wondering about the resale value of tiny homes. So, is this an investment that someone can make in their, 20s or 30s, and then maybe their life changes, they have a family, they might want to move into a bigger space? Can they resell that and make money? Kind of, what does that market look like?
I've never lost money on any of the homes I've sold. I've always sold them for cost plus. Now, most homes are attached to a piece of land, and generally it's the piece of land that goes up so greatly in value.
Mm-hmm.
But with that said, again, I've had people sell a home. The young lady I made it for I think it cost us just under 40, and I know she sold it for 60. So that's a couple of years later. So there's profit to be made if you want to do it, by all means.
Yeah, definitely. And I can already guess the answer, but would you ever consider going back into a traditional home?
Shaking his head already. So
Absolutely. I can't give up this lifestyle. It's too freeing for me. And I've always been a bit of a nomad, and I've always wanted to live this way. My sisters, I always used to say I could live in a cardboard box. Now I just steal one, but I'd rather be outside than inside.
all right, thank you very much. Honestly, I think that helps to clear up a lot of the questions our listeners might have about tiny homes, and also maybe motivate them, in case they're thinking about it, to try to go down that route. So thank you very much for your time today, Roger. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Our next guest is Bianca Metz, Director of Sustainable Spaces, lead tiny home consultant for The Giving Tree, and a co-producer of the Tiny Home Show based in Ontario. Welcome, Bianca.
Thank you. Hello.
So, Bianca, tiny homes are obviously a huge part of your work and home life. How did your tiny homes journey begin?
That is a wonderful question. Our tiny home journey began much like any large lifestyle shift. You kind of have to reach a precipice in order to enact kind of a significant change. And my husband and I were living in a condo. We were conventional homeowners. Both of us have a really profound relationship with nature. And so living in a condo wasn't in total alignment with who we are and what we value. And at this point, we were pregnant with our first child, Bodhi. I was pregnant. We were not pregnant with our first child, Bodhi. And we were living in the condo. I was working, really long hours at my job to pay for our bills. $3,000 plus a month was quite significant even 5 years ago. And so I actually ended up working so hard that I gave birth to my son early, 6 weeks early. I ended up going into labor, and that was really the crux. We decided that, this lifestyle is not conducive to a happy, healthy relationship or family life, and there was no balance. When my health was at risk and the health of my baby was at risk, we decided to make a really drastic lifestyle shift. And so we quite literally sold everything that we owned. We sold our condo, we got out of the housing market, and we bought a $60,000 tiny home on wheels on Kijiji.
Wow. Well, I think a lot of people would go, whoa, that is a big decision, especially with a baby.
Yes, it was a very big decision, and we did get a lot of feedback from family and friends. Most people were in support. The rest were just cautious on our behalf and really hoping that we were making the right decision. And we're really glad that we took the jump, especially when, a year or so later, COVID hit. And so, yeah, it was supported, but also I think people had cautious optimism.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting when you think about condos. Kadeem and I are based in Toronto. There's a lot of glass boxes in the sky, not much space. Do you feel, even though you're now living in a tiny home, do you feel like you've actually gained more space and kind of built a bigger life for your family?
1000%. Yes, big time. We might have gone from 1,000 square feet to 240 square feet, but now we have access to land. We have access to nature. We live on 6 acres where we are, so we're land stewards to the property that we live at. and we take care of that property in harmony with nature, and we're always putting that first. And the lifestyle difference between having zero access to nature, at our front door, as opposed to now we walk out our front door and we're in the middle of the woods. And so not everyone will have that opportunity, of course. But with that intentional lifestyle shift, we now spend most of our time outdoors. That was a big purpose into why we decided to make the shift. So I would say we may have downsized our space, but that gave us a lot more than I think the conventional 1,200 square feet would have ever given us.
We've talked a lot about, affordable housing, how young people can get on the housing ladder on this podcast. Can you walk us through actually some of the concrete costs, if you don't mind? So, on average, how much would it cost to buy a tiny home? How much does it cost to fund it in terms of energy? You mentioned insurance. You mentioned a few other things like that. Is this a more sort of affordable way of life for young professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely not going to be affordable for everyone, but there's always pockets of the community in which this is going to be affordable for. And so for the kind of breaking up the costs, I section things out in terms of the land and the build. And the land itself, we are assuming that the person who owns the property is setting up the infrastructure for that. So if someone is hoping to host a tiny home tenant, they can expect to pay between upwards of around $20,000 to set up a pad or a parking spot. And I'm air quoting parking spot for a tiny home. And so that also kind of financially can be absorbed in a much quicker manner than that property owner building their own additional dwelling unit and renting that out. The turnaround on investment on that is much shorter, couple of years depending on the lease agreement. From the end user standpoint, from the tiny home person, they can expect to pay anywhere from, at the very low end, $50,000, $60,000, $75,000 on a self-contained tiny home, all the way up to around $250,000 on a fully custom, large, triple axle, very, very large tiny home. And so I understand that range is quite broad, but that is also for a reason. And oftentimes you get what you pay for when it comes to everything in this world. But in terms of the tiny home world, it is really hard to navigate because we're really in the thick of the movement. So there are a lot of builders who are capitalizing on that, but then there are a lot of ethically priced structures. Now, for other soft costs, you're looking at a lease fee. So on the low end of a lease fee, I put that at $0. And the reason I do that is, for example, my family and I don't pay any lease fee. We are land stewards, so we actually do a sweat equity work exchange. We take care of the 6 acres that we live on for the person who owns the property. And that amount of effort and work that goes into maintaining this property pays for itself very quickly. The property owner saves thousands of dollars a year just for us to do that. So from there, you can look at conventional RV park, trailer park kind of parking spot fees around $350 to $550. The higher end, where we're going to see a lot of these scenarios, are going to settle around $750 to $1,000 for a lease fee per month. So you can expect a finance payment if you are financing the project or your home, and then a lease fee as well. And then other soft costs would be, for example, using a lawyer for the land lease agreement or a realtor. That can be around $800 to $1,500. You can also look into things such as adding furniture and different infrastructure to your home. An incinerating toilet is $5,000, whereas a composting toilet is $2,500. And in the grand scheme of things, $2,500 can actually go a long way to saving you some money. So those are realistically a lot of the major cost considerations. And then there are, of course, a lot of other soft costs depending on the living situation that you find.
Thank you. And in terms of cost too, I guess as we sort of wrap up here. So you mentioned you have the sweat equity arrangement that you have where you're living currently. You mentioned having a leasing on someone else's land, paying for that plot. I guess I'm wondering in terms of how common those kind of setups are and other common ways to finance a tiny home, because you mentioned mortgages from traditional lenders too.
Yes. So in terms of financing a tiny home, there are a couple methods. So it depends on the type of home you buy. So a lot of tiny homes are still certified as recreational vehicles, even though they're built to building code and they're built as habitable dwellings. But the only way that the market or the financing market specifically, would issue loans for these is if the home had a VIN number. So that means it's a recreational vehicle, and thus you could secure RV financing for it. Basically, for the last 5+ years, that is how people have secured their loans for their tiny homes. Now that the market is exploding, of course, we have people falling in line. We have lenders who are hoping to kind of get on this movement. And so now we have more conventional mortgages and conventional loans. So of course, with anything that's new and anything that's relatively high risk, you have higher interest rates or shorter amortization. So you can expect for example, a $100,000 loan might bring you at about a $900 payment or $800 payment per month for 25 years. A $200,000 tiny home would bring you at about $1,600 per month for around 25 years, depending on your interest rate. So in the grand scheme of things, it could be very beneficial for someone who, say, has sold their $1 million house, and now has $250,000 to potentially just toss at this, and then they won't carry a mortgage. But for those couples or individuals who have gainful income who will never be able to enter into the housing market, this is affordable because they can have their own self-contained unit, they can have their own home, their peace of mind. That's a piece of equity as well. That's an asset.
And I was just wondering, because we're talking about, so now it's shifted to survival. I've talked a bit about environmental, but are there other things you think that could appeal to a younger generation about this type of living that they might not know about? Something that they might not think about going in that also will kind of give them a bigger benefit when they get in?
Oh, consumption. Consumption is probably one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about. When I started the Giving Tree, I was actually doing a lot of coaching in downsizing. This kind of mindset, I built an entire kind of coaching program around my own downsizing journey, moving from a condo into the tiny house, how to utilize all those small spaces. And I became a completely different consumer. And by doing that, our finances started looking completely different. And so one of the kind of key aspects that I would talk about is our systems and our habits. And it's really something that we as a society don't ever really focus on. And so systems and habits are things that you develop throughout your life that you, for example, mirror from growing up in the house you grew up in, maybe where your parents put their keys, you put their keys in your current house. Where the mail goes in when the house you grew up, that's where it goes. Where the junk drawer is, where your shoes go. We're doing a lot of modeling and emulating from how we grew up. And so those systems and habits were built from a generation that is not our generation. So we're building consumption habits based on a totally different generation and their financial price points. So when you downsize and when you make these intentional shifts, you are really doing so at the benefit to yourself, because you'll start to learn about what you need and what you don't need. You'll start to learn about how you consume, what you spend your money on. You'll start to realize you don't have space for all the things. You'll start to realize you don't need all the things.
I just have to ask one thing about that, which is, how do you manage that with Bodhi? I don't know how old he is, but I don't have any children myself, but just based on TV shows, etc., there's mess everywhere. There's toys everywhere. There's clothes everywhere. So how do you manage that in a tiny home?
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't not happen.
We're very good at cleaning.
Yeah, I'm extremely intentional about what we bring in. Of course, it's a challenge. He sees all of his friends with big homes and basements full of toys, and he wonders why he doesn't have that. And so there's a lot of coaching him through understanding why we live how we live. And I think he holds some embarrassment because he doesn't get it. He's 5.5. I think that was about around age 4. Now he's at a point where he goes into other people's houses and he says, "Mommy, are we going to always live in our tiny house?" And I say, "Well, maybe we'll get a bigger house eventually. That's the plan." And he's like, "Well, Mommy, I don't want to. I love my tiny house. I love it." And so that's for him, that the mentality is really lovely.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, personal and your work experience as well. Lots of great learnings and takeaways there for our listeners. I've certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure Kadeem has too. So,
Absolutely.
Bianca, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was lovely. Thank you for doing what you are doing and sharing all of these lovely gifts to the world. So thank you.
So, Kadeem, after hearing Roger and Bianca share their insights on tiny homes, what would you say stood out for you?
I think one thing was just the difference in prices, because I was wondering if that could just be down to the difference in housing markets, which we've discussed before. Like PEI, I think he said it can start off at $10,000, at least if he's doing a container fix up. And in comparison, looking at Ontario market, I think Bianca had mentioned, 50,000 plus. And I guess that also differs in method too. It could be container versus, doing it another way costs more. It's stood out most really is that it's a lot more complicated than I thought in terms of licensing, fees, permits, and so forth. It's a complicated field, but I guess it can still pay off some dividends for younger audience.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting when Bianca broke down what you'd actually be paying and how that compared personally to the rent that I'm paying here in Toronto, which is relatively high. Um, but for, it pays off because I would be owning my own space, I would be building my own home. So, you have to figure out what's important to you when making that decision, I suppose.
For sure. I thought the sweat equity arrangement that she has is very interesting as well. It can definitely work for a younger audience for sure. I think is if you're
Yeah, I'd love
managing
to do that.
yeah, if you're managing 6 acres, that's pretty strenuous. But I think if, like as I said, if that works for them though, that sounds like a pretty interesting deal. Not something you hear about regularly for sure.
hmm The nature side of it definitely is something that appeals to me. I think, when you have a small internal space, you need to be able to create and be sort of free outside. And it sounds like, they've worked that out as a family, and that's so nice to hear. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of other tiny home dwellers enjoy too. So that would be the one thing that appeals to me.
I will also add that just with I think both her and Roger, they both mentioned that even though the space on paper seems small, that there is a lot of space for Bianca, it's the 6 acres of space they have outside. But even with Roger, though, he's saying within the home itself, just the way it's set up, he does feel like it's very spacious. Feels like it'd be a bit better than a 1 bedroom apartment in Toronto. And there's also might be more space outside to make up for that as well, plus lower costs. So seems like there's lots of benefits for someone who might be interested in that.
You can create a big home in a tiny space.
And that concludes our 3-part real estate series, The Next Generation of Home Buying. We hope you enjoyed that and found it helpful.
If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this podcast.
Special thanks to executive producer Samantha Eamon and producers Kevin Hamilton, Jenny Potter, Shane Murphy, James Baston, Mary Alcaber, and technical producer Mohammed Tabish. This episode was edited by Lead Podcasting.